All right, Nick, here we are. Another
Yeah,
day,
let's
another
do it.
year. Yes.
Another day, another year. All right. Hello, everyone. And we are back with Rado. Sorry again that we didn't pause for such a long time, but we have a very valid excuse for that because we were doing a lot of things and a lot of things were happening, right, Rado?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've all, even though we're all sick and struggling with many things, we're trying to get some good action happening. And I encourage people to have a look on our website, and they'll see some of the recent things we've been doing. But one thing that's really got in the mainstream news more recently is this issue of compensation, Nick.
Hmm.
And that seems to have created a bit of traction not only in print media but also in mainstream TV, which is very interesting, and it's sort of heartening that some people are paying attention to that now.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, unless you are dying or you are in the hospital, you can't dream about the compensation.
Well, that's right.
The
That's
problem is
interesting.
that they can't even they can't even understand the whole scale of problems. Like you may not be disabled, but you may struggle every day. That's what we see with people. The neurological issues, uh, brain fogs, everything else. That people can still function, but they're not in a hospital, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I've got a good friend. He's got only one symptom, and it's brain fog. It's not as severe as many of us, but he notices that every day in his work he cannot do some of the basic things in his work, and so that's what people are struggling with. These symptoms that persist and that impede them, enjoying a full life. Unfortunately,
Exactly, exactly. So I'm actually curious, is there any initiative around the world to, I don't know, for people to push for compensation or something like that? Like, for example, we have a few things in Australia, but I'm asking people from Europe, from US, and it doesn't seem like there is some, organized action to make it happen.
yeah, it's a worldwide problem. Unfortunately, maybe we can just go through what we understand is happening here in Australia, and we can probably reflect on some of the international situations as well. But unfortunately, each country around the world, some countries don't have any way to support people.
Hmm.
Um, Other countries have different schemes, but they've all got major problems. Now, here in Australia, the first thing I guess is if you were lucky, let's put that in commas there. If you were lucky and you were mandated to get the vaccine and you got injured while you were mandated, then in theory you can access workers' compensation. Um, and But unfortunately, what we found with our own surveys at Coverse is that most people are being rejected. The insurance
Hmm.
companies don't know how to understand these types of injuries, and often they defer to official government information, which is, as we've probably discussed in the past, it's incomplete and it only shows a few conditions, even though you
Hmm.
and I have had conditions that aren't there on the list of serious outcomes. Um, so a lot of insurance companies will look at that list and say, well, you're not on that list, therefore we can't compensate you. It's not a vaccine injury. But in truth, it is a vaccine injury. It's
Hmm.
just it may not be recognised by the government. So it's very difficult for insurance companies. Obviously, it's very distressing for the employees who are suffering this thing, but I could also imagine that employers having a very difficult time with this because they want to look after their staff, but
Of
the
course.
insurance company is very poorly equipped to handle this situation. So, one of the things that we've done at Coverse is we've made some submissions with actually with the help of Dr. Mel, when we can talk about her in a minute as well,
Hmm.
um, to some workers' compensation. Organizations to help them understand the problem, and hopefully this situation will improve. So that's one area, workers' compensation. But most of us, we just got the vaccine. We weren't made to get it. There was no mandate for our work. I mean, you weren't mandated, were you, Nick?
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, so I wasn't mandated either. So I took it, um, without that um, you know particular force imposed on me. So yeah, and then one thing that sort of gave me a bit of assurance was that the government. announced that it would compensate people. It was going to have a compensation program that if you did get injured, that they would look after you financially. So that sort of gave me a little bit of comfort that if something did happen to me, then there'd be some support. But now we all know that with very, very few exceptions, most of us do not qualify for what the government has put in place, which is, I think that's a national shame. Rather than saying we're going to support everyone who's been injured, they're saying we're only going to support the ones that the TGA approves of.
Hmm.
It's almost like a selection criteria that if you're good enough, you get that compensation, but the rest of you can suck eggs. It's really not a very nice feeling to having accepted their suggestion that these vaccines were safe and effective, and then they're not going to look after us after all. It's pretty
Exactly.
horrible.
But the thing is, they don't even understand how to put the diagnosis of everything, right? Because we have so many things what we see people are suffering from. It could be just the skin burn, the brain fog, everything else. But all of the tests are clear. Everything is clear. Like for sure, when you have a pericarditis or myocarditis, it's possible to diagnose it, right? It's inflammation. But then when you have so many people that have really like issues that are dragging them down every single day, but you cannot really diagnose it, it brings the confusion. I feel like we'll see a bit more progress once, but of course we need to have funds for that from the government to make sure that there is a research to understand how to diagnose this kind of things. Because the for example, if we take the skin burn, right, or something like that, these are all neurological symptoms. But unless there is some test that can show that this is the issue and this is the valid diagnosis, I think it will just hang almost forever. So as you can see, like you literally have to be in the hospital or bedridden to be in the part of the compensation scheme.
Yeah, that's right. And what's interesting is all around the world you have different parts of government. They're supposed to look after, investigate adverse reactions or supposed to compensate people, but there's nobody anywhere, as far as I understand, there's nobody anywhere that is required to research these conditions. So, like you said,
Exactly.
all these people who are getting you know, diagnose or I should say non-diagnoses. They've got all these symptoms, but they've got no
Hmm.
diagnoses. And unfortunately, nobody is required to do research to find out what is going on, and that makes it extra difficult, like you said. So
Exactly.
yeah, but interestingly, there are a few countries in the world, and I could be wrong. I think Thailand. We wrote about this in our submission to government last year. That if somebody has an adverse reaction, they can apply to the compensation program that the Thai government has in place, and they get a financial compensation within a few days.
Hmm.
Um, and then the investigation proceeds, and if the investigation finds out that it wasn't the vaccine, then that person still gets to keep the money.
Hmm.
Now, that might seem a bit strange, but if you're thinking about public health policy, what do you want to achieve? Do you want to give people confidence in the public health measures and give people confidence in vaccines? Or do you want people to feel like their government abandoned them? So,
Hmm.
so the Thai government, very smart in my opinion, has said we want to give people confidence. Therefore, we will compensate all of these people who have these reactions, regardless of whether it actually is from the vaccine. Um,
Hmm.
so I've probably worded that a bit incorrectly, but that's the type of sentiment. It's a very different approach from our government here, where I don't know if you saw one of the TV programs that interviewed one of the claimants for the government program. He had to put together 1,000 pages of documentation, and it took him 11 months. And
Hmm.
now he has to wait probably close to a year, I expect, before he gets an answer back. And in the meantime, he's got no income because he can't work. His employer has had to let
Hmm.
him go, and there's no other money to fall back on. So, um, in that instance, our government is making it difficult to people for people to actually um, get be made whole again to sort of work through the financial situation that this harm has done to them. So I
Exactly.
wish our government would find a better way of doing it, but in the absence of all that, it's not really surprising that there's now this class action happening that's saying the government has actually done the wrong thing by people.
Exactly. I'm wondering. I don't think everyone knows about the class action. So let's cover it, rather. What do you know about the class action?
Well, this is really interesting. So there's a doctor up in far north Queensland, Dr. Melissa McCann, um, and she noticed that she was getting more adverse reactions in her community than what she thought she should be seeing based on government statistics. And the more she looked into it, the more concerned she got. Um, and then when it became clear that this government compensation scheme was either not compensating all of these people or was taking too long, she decided to put together a class action to to get compensation for those people who really needed it.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's where it all started from. And so I suppose we shouldn't say too much about it because we're not lawyers and we don't know all the details. But it's basically open to any Australian who has had an injury from the COVID vaccine,
Hmm.
um, and who doesn't have, you know, any other obvious way of getting support, or even if they do, though, I think they can still join.
Hmm.
And Yeah, this class action was saying, look, the government has not looked after these people, has not told them the truth about the risks and benefits of the vaccines, and so hopefully they will reach a conclusion where people who currently have no opportunity to get compensated will be able to get something from the government. Because you and I, we know people who've not only lost their jobs, but in some cases lost their houses because of the financial difficulties,
Definitely.
relationships broken up. Some people have had their kids taken away from them because of the stresses in the family. So yeah, it's
Hmm.
pretty horrible things that many of these vaccine injured people have had to face. So this type of class action is just a small thing, the financial aspect that can then help make it easier for these people to get on with their lives. But we'll put the link in
Definitely.
the bottom at the end, so for anyone
Hmm.
in Australia, they can go to that link. And I think what's probably important about this class action is it's not a no win no fee situation. Like some of the big litigation firms, they'll say no win no fee. But when they do
Hmm.
win, they take half of the of the win.
Hmm.
So this is a bit different. Um, and this is where Dr. Mel has really shown her compassion. Is she's putting up the money for it. So it means that my understanding is that if the case loses, then the injured people won't be further burdened with additional financial
Hmm.
um, you know losses or liabilities. So that's really interesting. But just to clarify that, I think people, if they go to the website, they can read all the documentation on there. If they
Hmm.
have any questions, they can certainly call the law firm involved and just make sure that it's right for them, or maybe they don't want to do it. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's people need to know that this is an option that's available to them.
Hmm. Exactly. That's amazing because it kind of I feel like worldwide this is one of the first class actions. Maybe the first class action. Because again, Dr. Mao, she's extremely passionate about what she's doing, and like you have a lot of people that just have nothing else to do. Like everyone abandoned them, right? So some people literally lost their family members that died because of that, and nobody wants to investigate it. So yeah, like I really hope that this class action is going to succeed because we need to start putting it into the normal. I don't want to say culture, but the stop the gaslighting. Explain that it happened. Explain that doctors that hey, if you have any of these symptoms, to not exclude the vaccines because when people are getting injured, they go to doctor and then unless you have something with your heart rate, unless you have a chest pain, you should be fine. But we all know rather that the number of all of the side effects is crazy big, and if for some people it took maybe 3 6 months to recover, there is a very big number of people that are either almost permanently injured or it's completely unknown. And if this class action succeeds, it's not even from the financial side. It just means that the government at least wants to investigate more. It's going to be a green light for more research and everything else. But as you just recently mentioned, if we don't have any research to understand what's going on, of course, all of the tests are going to be clear. It needs quite a good funding to understand each and every of the neurological issue, whatever happens again with blood, with other organs, because yeah, otherwise everyone would be healthy on paper but still struggle for the rest of their life.
That's right. I remember the last time I was in hospital, the doctor said, "Your blood tests are disgustingly normal." And I think that's what many of us unfortunately experience. Luckily for me, he believed me that he could see I was in a lot of distress and a lot of pain. Um, but yeah,
Exactly.
the tests were not very useful.
That's
Yeah.
the thing. Yeah, that's are kind of useless. They take them, but you also believe that all of the tests they're taking, the normal traditional blood test, this is for very high level things. What we're dealing with is something much low level. Like it requires some very specialized things.
And this is where, you know, I think Coverse, one of the motivations for Coverse was to try and get some good research happening.
Hmm.
Is because we see so many people experimenting on themselves, some of them very dangerously. But
Yes.
without any other help, I mean, what else can we do? Should we just sit back and die? I don't think so.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it's interesting. Maybe I should mention that what I've done on our website now, we've got a page where we mention a little bit about the class action, but also about the compensation scheme, and a few other areas where people might be able to get some financial help.
Hmm.
And we list two law firms that are helping people with the government compensation program because it's not easy
Hmm.
to put in a claim. Um, we don't necessarily endorse those firms, and we don't necessarily endorse the class action either. But if anybody knows of any other law firms that are helping people with their claims, or if they've got law firms that are going through some other actions, then please let us know so that we can list them on there. And then other people can maybe use them as a resource. So that's all we aim to do on our website. Is it's a resource to people to get access to information to help them. Um, yeah, so it'd be interesting to see. And you mentioned that this class action might be the first in the world, and um, I think it may be the first class action against a government. But I know
Hmm.
in the UK there's a class action against AstraZeneca,
Hmm.
which is also recently launched. Um, in the US, just in the last week, there's been a class action launched against the US government for censorship of
Hmm.
vaccine injured people, you know, because they've got their First Amendment, free speech,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
this social media censorship. It really imposes on people's free speech rights. So that would be interesting to see that one. So all around the world, there's these different actions happening, and they're going to address slightly different problems, but it's all part of the same issue we've all faced all over the world. You know, drug companies have had certain issues, you know, with the clinical trials. Then
Hmm.
governments have had certain issues with not telling the public the whole truth, and then we've got, you know, governments also censoring people. In collusion with private media organisations. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see over the next few years how all this is going to work out.
Exactly.
And hopefully
Exactly.
all of the injured will be able to recover, and no more people will get hurt.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, everyone really wants the whole thing to be resolved and stuff, but yeah, censorship for sure. Like, uh, the thing is, for the censorship, I think we have a very good example as even this channel, right? For
Hmm.
example, it's super hard to even look up for these videos around because they're just not indexed by the search engine. So, but when we look for the first class section, which is launched as you said, rather against the government, it makes sense because, for example, when you got your vaccine, do you remember reading somewhere about what happened to you that can happen in adverse reaction, right?
No,
Nothing,
no, not at all.
nothing. So you see, like same for me and same for almost everyone. And neither of this, and we know that it happened to other people. It's not just like you rather have it, I have it, and that's it, and no one else have it. Like just two of us in the whole world. There are much more people, but the problem is that like they have the very tiny group of those with particular injuries, and they simply focus on them, which at least better than nothing. But the whole umbrella of side effects is just giant. So technically, it makes sense because, and also very important fact that you mentioned the compensation scheme, because this was also kind of a tipping point for me, because when I was thinking, okay, great, I feel safe because if something goes wrong, first of all, it's been approved by the TGA. So TGA is definitely, TGA knows what it's doing, right? It was the first thing in the mind. And then the next somebody it was in a Twitter, I read that, okay, and now we launched the compensation scheme. Like it was a very, like giant announcement. And people like, okay, we have nothing to worry about. Everything would be fine. But then in reality, the TGA just copies and pastes your emails and sends it back to you until they just stop responding or send back to GP. When you try even to look up for compensation scheme, like literally 1% of all people, or maybe 3% are eligible for it, because majority of their side effects are not listed. But it's not side effect. This is the freaking permanent disability. This is like, I mean, hopefully not permanent, but I mean, when we look at the situation clearly, it lasts already for us over 1.5 years, right?
That's
So,
right. I remember one of the things that really gave me some assurance was listening to some experts saying that vaccine side effects usually happen very quickly and they're usually very short-lived. And I
mm,
thought, okay, well, okay, if that's generally the case, and okay, that gives me some extra assurance.
hmm
And like my reaction was quite quick. It was in several hours when things started to go wrong. Um, but I honestly expected that those symptoms would at most last a few weeks, and it's been
hmm
19 months now.
exactly.
And while there was a previous video I did when I around about Christmas time last year, and I actually had some really good improvement. I was feeling really good. Not everything improved, but a lot of things improved, and that was great. But then in the last 3 or 4 weeks, things have gone backwards really, really badly, and a lot of people as well. They'll have periods where they've improved, and then
hmm
periods where the wheels fall off again, and they're back to the beginning. And so
exactly.
it's an ongoing, never-ending cycle, unfortunately, and there's no clear answers as to how long this might last, what exactly we can do to get over it completely, and maybe we
hmm
can't, and certainly no recognition that this is actually what's happening to us.
Exactly. That's completely true. Yeah, 19 months and still going. Exactly. But you know what? Something tells me that once we look back at the situation, maybe in 5, 10 years' time, that will be in all medical journals. It would be a very big story. We'll see a Netflix stories. We'll see lots of dramas, everything else, because you can see now, even when we compare the media coverage 1 year ago and what we see now, that's a giant leap. That's an absolutely giant leap. We still have companies like Facebook, YouTube, I mean Google overall, that are still censoring, blindly censoring the whole thing. But people are kind of waking up. They're understanding that, all right, because now more and more the chance that either you know somebody who knows somebody who is vaccine injured, or you know somebody directly, or you are affected, this percentage grows much higher.
Yeah,
It's not like
exactly.
you read it in news or you checked it on some Reddit, etc. It's the real life example.
Yeah,
So yeah, this is, at least we are getting in the right direction.
yeah. I mean that fact actually is what really shocked me. Just how many people I knew, and this was before I went online, right? How many people in my own circle who had very, very bad reactions that
hmm
went on, you know. And I just recently went through and I added them all up. There was 20 people who had severe and ongoing reactions.
Crazy.
Some of them were hospitalized. with blood clots.
Mhm.
Quite a number who had, the heart inflammation, um, and then a lot of people with this long vaccine syndrome, this unexplained, like long COVID issue. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, yeah, it's quite. And when I didn't know that until I got injured. Um,
Exactly.
it was an interesting social phenomena. When I got injured, for the first little while, I couldn't talk to anyone. That was impossible for me to talk to anyone. But once I started to feel a bit more able to have a conversation with people, I I found that when I told other people what I was going through, it gave them a safe space to tell me what they were going through.
Mhm.
And they were in the same situation as me. Previously they couldn't tell anyone, um,
Mhm.
because of the whole social environment that was happening with the pandemic, and the derision and the gaslighting and the name calling against people who were saying they were vaccine injured. So yeah, that and then once I started talking to people, all these people around me said, yes, I've been experiencing this, I've been experiencing that. Yes, it's been going
Mhm.
on and on, and it was a shock. I honestly thought that with this huge amount of vaccination, there'd be a few people, with these serious effects. And based on the numbers that the government was telling us, I might know one person, maybe two people, who
Mhm.
had some sort of serious reaction, and it would probably only last a short period of time. But that's not what I found. A lot of people. So I agree with you, Nick. I think that everybody in the country, I think everybody actually would know one person at least who's severely injured. Those people who say they don't know anyone, I think they may be the type of people who are, the name callers. They're calling people cookers or anti-vaxxers or whatever nonsense, and so nobody's going to tell them anything. Like, why would you? Why would you open up to a person like that only to have them call you names? So yeah, I honestly think that everybody knows somebody.
Exactly. Exactly. Which is scary. So maybe for us, we're in some way lucky because the reaction was so severe from the day one. But we know that for quite a few people, the reaction is like time bomb. It's quite
Yes,
delayed.
yes,
So it could take 3 to 6 months to just suddenly something just fires it up. And of course, so for example, imagine you took you took the vaccine now, and then in 3 months you're getting something with heart. This is not something that comes to your mind. Like you would think about the vaccine maybe once you read other people reviews or something like that. But it's like, okay, cool, maybe I exercise too much. Maybe I just need to see a cardiologist. But then you're like, oh, actually, I had this 3 months ago. And that's the problem. For those people that have it almost instantly, like all of us, we are kind of blessed that we know exactly the cause. But for other people, and the problem, yeah, the follow-up problem here is that if it is related to the vaccine, they're taking the second and the third one. And when it's already bad and they take another one, I don't know, what do you expect? Like, do you
yeah,
expect it to get better? Of course not. You get it worse. And it's going to, maybe in future, it's going to be much harder to help them because
mm,
they just don't have one or two. Now they have three or four.
yeah. I might just clarify something there. You mentioned 3 months, and a lot of people listening to this might think, oh, 3 months, that you can't prove anything. Well, we've actually, in the literature, there's some things, and we do have some people in our community who have medically confirmed vaccine reactions 3 months after they actually got
Hmm.
injected. Now, this is confirmed. Um, that is somewhat rare to have that type of confirmation, but it does happen, right? So,
Yeah.
so yes, when you say 3 months, it's certainly within the realms of possibilities. Now, in my own circle, that 20 people I spoke about, that doesn't include people who had reactions after several months.
Hmm.
So there are a number of people, very close friends, who have developed serious problems 6 months after their vaccinations, and
Hmm.
nothing else explains it. There's nothing else in their medical history in the meantime that explains that why they have developed symptoms that are similar to what you and I have got. So, and no COVID either. Um, Confirmed no COVID.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so this is a yeah. It makes it really difficult, for those types of people, and like you said, it's where we're a bit blessed in that regard. Mm.
Exactly, because that's the problem. Every time you go to doctor with something like that, they're always like, "But you had a COVID, right? You recently had a COVID." That this one strikes extremely. That whatever happens, their first task is completely eliminate vaccination, but just go for the COVID. This is their number one. It feels like they all have the same, the bullet point list, and this is the number one thing: confirm or try to convince that this is the COVID.
Yeah, yeah,
And the best part for us, we actually have inside the covers, we have quite a few people that have on their hands the confirmation that prior to the vaccination they had no COVID. Like literally, the blood test, which is dated which is dated, I don't know, before and then after vaccine, and then so the proof is there and we
yeah,
have it.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Um, yeah, I mean, there's I part of the journey of when you have an injury, part of what is required, and it's just common sense, right, is to exclude everything else, because
Hmm.
there could be, and as we're told, coincidence doesn't mean that it was caused by something, right? And
Hmm.
so you go and look for all these other things, and I think this is what a lot of people don't realize when they say, "Oh, but you can't claim you have a vaccine injury because coincidence doesn't prove that it's causal." Well, that assumes that we've been sitting back doing nothing, feeling sorry for ourselves. That's not the case.
Hmm.
We've all gone on very many medical discoveries, right? We've gone to many specialists, we've had many tests, been to hospital many times, and they cannot find anything else. And so you've got the temporal coincidence, the time frame, and you have no evidence of anything else. And that's
Hmm.
very, very strong evidence. And then you've got someone like me who had two shots. So I've got what's called re-challenge. So you got hurt once and then you did the same thing again and got hurt twice. So
Hmm.
so it's pretty damning evidence that it was the vaccine. So, and a lot of people in the community who don't want to acknowledge these problems, they don't realize that we've all been to the doctors lots. we've
Exactly.
we've investigated this lots, and nothing else is showing up. So yeah, it's pretty frustrating when there are still people in the public who try and push that type of narrative. They don't talk to us about it. They'll just assume that we've done nothing, and therefore it makes our stories ambiguous. But that's not the
Exactly.
case. There's nothing ambiguous about what happened to me at all, and or you or any of us, right?
Unless it happens to you, the story is the same. Unless it happens to you, you don't care about that. But
Yep.
once we get these people that claim that this is all bananas, and then it happens to them, we see that everything will change very fast.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
That's for
And
sure.
and sadly, we work with people who exactly that happened to.
Hmm.
Very strong vaccine advocates who, um, and then unfortunately something bad happened to them, and all of a sudden they realised that, geez, maybe I wasn't
No,
right. And
exactly.
a lot of doctors have gone through that process as well. Either it happened
Hmm.
to them or their family, or they see it in a lot of their patients. Um,
Exactly.
and and this is a really tricky area actually because doctors are supposed to follow the best medical guidance,
Hmm.
um, and for them that means the official guidance of agencies like the TGA or ATAGI and the recommendations from those authorities. And it's a real challenge because if uh, I think most of the doctors were very enthusiastic about the vaccine campaigns, and most of them have been probably good vaccine advocates over the years. But um, uh, if their patients got injured because of the advice that they gave them, that's a very difficult situation for a doctor to be in.
Extremely.
So, but from our point as patients and as a patient group, my perspective is, look, I'm not blaming you. You were following the best advice you could, and so was I.
Hmm.
I tried to get good information about the safety of these vaccines. So did you. And if that all turned out to be wrong, then we're in a bit of a pickle. But please don't perpetuate it. Let's call it out and try and solve this problem now
Exactly.
rather than another 5 or 10 years down the track. So um, I I have open arms for doctors who are willing to say, geez, maybe I got it wrong. Maybe
Hmm.
we need to have another look at this thing. So
Exactly. Exactly. And to be honest, when you see the scale of the problem, you would just put absolutely everything aside and make these departments work. Like when you see the real scale of problem, when this is mind blowing.
Yeah, exactly. And that really, it took me a while to sort of come to terms with that.
Hmm.
That the TGA has had this, and all of the state governments as well, because they get reports of adverse reactions. They had these huge numbers of reports of serious adverse reactions, right? And the TGA website now, they list 137,000 reports of adverse reactions. Um, Now, I find it hard to believe that most of them are mild, because you don't make a report if you have a mild headache for a day,
Exactly,
right?
exactly,
And
exactly.
and people like to point to that and they say, "Oh, look, we know that headaches happen after reaction, so therefore it's mild." Well, how do you know it's mild? How do you know it's
Correct.
short-lived? Because the TGA does not routinely follow up. This is just part of their modus operandi. They do not routinely follow up, and so there's absolutely no data on how serious a particular person's reaction was or how long it lasted. So, so you would think, just like you said, you would think that given the scale of this rollout, the scale of the pandemic problem itself, and the number of adverse reaction reports, that somebody in government might have said, "Geez, look at this. Maybe we should focus some attention on on
Hmm.
on looking at this problem in more detail." But it does not seem to have happened, unfortunately.
Exactly, and they don't follow up. You said amazing point, Rado. This is very important. They never follow up. They just, so you complain and they say, all right. So you literally have this kind of relationship, and then you want to follow up with them and they say, okay, but you need to go to GP. GP doesn't know what to do. That's
Mm,
it. You're stuck.
yep,
Nobody can help you.
yep.
That is ridiculous.
Hopefully, we'll never be in this situation ever again,
Yeah.
as a country. But um, yeah,
Mistakes are
unfortunately,
made and time to fix them. Yes.
yep, yep. So,
Then small steps, but yes, exactly. So, Rado, thank you very much. It was a very good discussion. Yeah, again, sorry to all of the viewers if you didn't see quite a lot of content in some time, but you can check the website because, again, our team is pushing always some new content on the website. Plus, we are doing lots of things. Like we'll update you on some of the interesting conferences that are in plan, and there are lots of exciting things we are doing. But to encourage everyone, it also feels like things are going forward. And from our side, we are doing our best. Yeah. Thank you, Rado. And
cheers, Nick.
see you for the next time. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.